All right, let's do this. We're diving deep today into Earth's history, from the Cambrian all the way to, well, us. And we've got a ton of material to work with, books, articles, even documentaries.
Wow, that's quite the stack.
It is, right? We're talking strange creatures, wild climate shifts, extinctions that'll make you forget all about the dinosaurs.
This is going to be fun. It's not just dry facts and dates,
Yeah,
It's a story, an adventure.
absolutely. And to help us make sense of it all, connect the dots between rocks and life and even what it means for us today, well, we've got our expert here.
Happy to be here.
Oh.
I always say the best part of this kind of deep dive is those aha moments when you see how everything is connected, how we got from there to here.
Exactly. So, first things first, deep time. This idea that Earth's history is so vast it makes human history look like a blink. It's hard to even wrap your head around.
Right. People come up with these analogies to try to explain it.
Right.
Squeezing Earth's entire history into a single day, a 24-hour clock.
Okay, I like that. A 24-hour clock. So, where do we start?
Well, on that clock, the first life doesn't even show up until around 4.0 a.m.
Wow, so early.
Yeah. And then dinosaurs, they don't come along until almost 11.0 p.m. And they only get like an hour to rule the world before.
Asteroid.
Exactly. And humans. We're crammed into the last few seconds before midnight. That's how vast this time scale is.
Mind-blowing. So using that clock analogy, we're starting our journey super early in Earth's history, in the Paleozoic era. And things kick off with a bang. The Cambrian Explosion around 541 million years ago.
Yeah.
I always pictured it as this sudden burst of life in the oceans, like out of nowhere.
Well, it was a pretty dramatic increase in diversity. It seemed like evolution was just experimenting with all sorts of crazy body plans.
Trilobites? I remember those fossils from when I was a kid.
Right. Those three-lobed armored creatures, they were incredibly successful, lived in all sorts of environments in the ocean.
But they weren't the only ones, right? Weren't there some even weirder creatures in those Cambrian seas?
Oh, absolutely. Anomalocaris, for example.
Yeah.
This fearsome predator, like something out of science fiction. Spiky appendages, circular mouth full of teeth. It's like nature was saying, let's see what sticks.
And then there's hallucigenia.
Aptly named. Scientists initially couldn't even tell which side was up. Spines on its back, these tiny tube-like legs.
Yeah.
Just bizarre.
It sounds like the Cambrian oceans were like a giant evolutionary laboratory. But what sparked this sudden explosion of diversity?
Ah, that's the million-dollar question. There are a few theories. Some scientists point to a rise in oxygen levels. More oxygen means more energy for complex life to evolve.
Makes sense.
Others focus on changes in ocean chemistry, more nutrients available, fueling that burst of life. It was likely a combination of factors, a perfect storm that created the conditions for life to explode.
So it wasn't just about new species popping up. It was about creating whole new ecosystems, food webs, predator-prey relationships.
Exactly. And that momentum continued into the Ordovician period. We see another burst of diversification, the Great Ordovician Biodiversification Event. And this time, it wasn't just about quantity, it was about complexity. More intricate food webs, more sophisticated interactions between species.
And life wasn't just confined to the oceans anymore, right? This is when plants started colonizing land.
Right. A huge milestone. It wasn't like forests or anything, though. More like simple, low-lying plants, similar to mosses and liverworts.
But still, pretty incredible to think of those early pioneers venturing out onto a completely barren landscape.
Absolutely. They paved the way for everything that came after. All the terrestrial ecosystems we see today, the forests, the insects, the animals, it all started with those brave little plants.
Amazing. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? I mean, the Ordovician period ended with a pretty significant extinction event.
It did. Even amidst all this incredible diversification, Earth can throw some curveballs. The Ordovician extinction was likely triggered by drastic climate change and fluctuating sea levels. A major setback for life, wiping out many of those newly evolved species.
It's a reminder that extinction is just as much a part of Earth's story as evolution. But as we'll see, life is incredibly resilient. So what happens next in our Paleozoic adventure?
It was a tough time, that Ordovician extinction. But yeah, like you said, life bounces back.
It does, huh?
Big time. The Silurian period, that's what comes next. We see this amazing recovery. Coral reefs start expanding, creating all these new habitats for marine life. And those early land plants, they're paving the way for, get this, arthropods.
Wait, arthropods on land, like bugs.
Ancestors of insects and spiders, yeah. Think a landscape with no trees, just low-lying plants and these little critters scurrying around.
So they were the first, like, land animals, besides those plants, of course.
Pretty much. They were pioneers, exploring this whole new world. No big predators to worry about. probably munching on decaying plant matter, setting the stage for, well, all the insects we know and love today. Or, maybe not love.
Right, but back to the oceans for a sec. Did they recover after that Ordovician extinction?
Oh, yeah, they did. The Silurian also saw the rise of jawed fish.
Okay, so fish had jaws now.
Yeah. Might seem like a small thing, but it was huge. Jaws changed everything. Fish could become active predators. The whole dynamic of the ocean shifted.
It's like a simple upgrade, but with massive consequences.
Totally. And some of these early jawed fish were pretty intense. Placoderms, for example. These armored fish, almost like swimming tanks. Can you imagine?
Not in my swimming pool, thank you very much. So we've got plants taking over the land, bugs creeping around, and fish with jaws in the seas. What's next in the Paleozoic hit parade?
The Devonian Period. Get ready for the Age of Fishes. This is where fish really take off, evolutionarily speaking.
You mentioned jawed fish earlier. Did they, keep evolving?
Oh, yeah, big time. We see the rise of cartilaginous fish, like sharks and rays, and the earliest bony fish. Most fish today, that's their ancestors. It was like this crazy time of experimentation in the water.
Cool. But wasn't there something special about the Devonian? Something that connects those ancient fish to, well, us?
You got it. This is where we find the ancestors of all tetrapods, four-limbed animals, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and eventually us. The Devonian is a key transition in life's history. Vertebrates starting to move from water onto land.
Hold on, how did fish evolve to walk on land? That seems like a big jump.
It was. Happened gradually over millions of years. We have these amazing fossils that show the transition. Tiktaalik, for example. It had scales and fins, but also, get this, a neck, wrists, and even primitive lungs. Like it was a fish, but with a toolkit for life on land.
So what made them leave the water?
Who knows for sure? Maybe escaping predators, maybe looking for new food sources. Imagine those first tentative steps onto a world mostly empty of vertebrates.
Mind-blowing. What did those early landscapes look like?
Must have been pretty strange. These fish-like creatures venturing out onto land. But the Devonian wasn't all sunshine and roses. There were a few extinction events. Climate change, changes in ocean oxygen levels, maybe even asteroid impacts.
Or like life's flourishing, but then bam, Earth throws a curveball.
It does. But even after those extinctions, life kept evolving. The Devonian gives way to the Carboniferous period, and things get really interesting.
Carboniferous? Okay, tell me more.
Picture this. Warm, humid, giant forests stretching as far as the eye can see. The Carboniferous was a time when plants truly took over the land. And those lush, swampy environments, well, guess what? They eventually gave us coal.
Coal? Wait, you're saying those ancient forests are the reason we have coal today?
It's a wild connection, right? All that plant matter in those Carboniferous swamps died and piled up. Over millions of years, heat and pressure transformed it into coal.
So our modern energy sources are literally linked to these ancient swampy forests. That's crazy.
It is. But the Carboniferous wasn't just about coal. Remember those arthropods we talked about? The ones that ventured onto land back in the Silurian? Well, in the Carboniferous, they hit the evolutionary jackpot.
Like they got bigger.
Oh, yeah. Giant insects. The high oxygen levels back then let them grow to sizes we can barely imagine today.
Okay, giant insects. Now I'm really interested.
One of the most famous is Meganura, a dragonfly-like insect with a wingspan of, get this, over 2 feet.
Ugh, no, thank you. I'll stick to the smaller ones. But seriously, how did they get so big?
It's all about how they breathe. Insects don't have lungs like us. They have these tiny tubes called tracheae that carry oxygen throughout their bodies. More oxygen in the atmosphere meant those tracheae could be bigger, more efficient, allowing them to grow huge.
So it was like a giant insect buffet back then. High oxygen, lush forests, plenty of space to grow. But it wasn't just insects evolving, right? What about amphibians and reptiles?
Good point. The Carboniferous was a time of big changes for vertebrates, too. Amphibians, they were loving those warm, humid environments.
Like swamp monsters.
Kind of. They diversified into all sorts of forms, some living in water, others more on land.
But you also mentioned reptiles. What were they up to?
Reptiles evolved from amphibians during the Carboniferous, and they had this key innovation. The amniotic egg changed the game for life on land.
Okay, remind me why amniotic eggs are such a big deal.
Think of it as a self-contained life support system. Amphibian eggs, they got to be laid in water. But amniotic eggs, they have this protective shell, membranes that keep the embryo moist, let it breathe. Reptiles could lay their eggs on land, no more dependence on water for reproduction.
Like they crack the code for living on land.
Yeah, It opened up a whole new world for them.
So giant insects buzzing around, amphibians hanging out in swamps, reptiles laying their fancy eggs. What happens next?
The Carboniferous gives way to the Permian period, and things get, well, kind of crazy. Remember that supercontinent, Pangaea?
Yeah, the one where all the continents were smushed together.
That's the one. It formed during the Permian. And this massive landmass had a huge impact on global climate and, well, everything. Plus, the Permian ends with the biggest extinction event Earth's ever seen.
The Great Dying, right, I've read about that. Over 90% of marine species gone. 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. What could cause that kind of devastation?
Scientists think it was a combo of things. Massive volcanic eruptions spewing out greenhouse gases, toxic chemicals, rapid climate change, ocean acidification, oxygen depletion, like a perfect storm of environmental catastrophes.
It's hard to imagine anything surviving that.
It was a close call for life on Earth. But some lineages made it through, and they would shape the entire course of evolution in the Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. Okay, but before we get to them, what about those survivors of the Permian extinction? Who were they?
Well, on land, there was this group called the archosaurs. They were incredibly adaptable, and guess what? They're the ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs.
So even in the midst of all that chaos, the seeds of the dinosaur dynasty were being sown.
Exactly. And those early mammals we talked about, they survived too. Small, unassuming, but they made it through.
Like waiting in the wings for their time to shine.
Yeah. So the Permian extinction wiped the slate clean, in a way, set the stage for the dinosaurs to take over.
What was that Triassic world like as these new players were emerging?
It was a world in recovery. Pangaea was still there, but it was starting to break apart, setting the stage for the continents we know today. Led to new coastlines, changes in ocean currents, all sorts of new challenges and opportunities for life. The survivors of the Permian extinction, they were diversifying, filling those empty niches, experimenting.
So Earth was still shaking things up. What about those archosaurs? What kind of creatures were they evolving into?
Well, the Triassic also saw the evolution of pterosaurs, those flying reptiles.
Pterosaurs. So now we've got creatures taking to the skies.
And don't forget the early mammals. They were still small, mostly nocturnal, but they were evolving, laying the groundwork for their eventual rise to dominance.
Biding their time. But what about the dinosaurs? Were they already stomping around?
Not quite. The earliest dinosaurs were actually pretty small, agile. They were just starting to diversify, experimenting with different body plans and lifestyles.
Like a dinosaur training ground.
In a way, yeah. But even as life was recovering, the Triassic wasn't without its challenges. There's another extinction event at the end of the period, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. And that, well, that paved the way for the dinosaurs to really take center stage.
Another extinction event. Geez, Earth likes to keep things interesting. But this time, the dinosaurs were ready.
They were. They survived and thrived, setting the stage for the Jurassic period, the iconic age of dinosaurs.
Jurassic Park, what was that world like?
Lush forests, ferns, cycads, towering conifers. The climate was warm and humid. The continents were separated now, offering all sorts of different habitats for dinosaurs to evolve.
A global dinosaur party.
Pretty much. You had the colossal sauropods, Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus with their long necks reaching high into the trees. These giants could grow to over 100 feet long.
100 feet? That's insane.
They were truly awe-inspiring. And then, of course, you had the meat-eaters, theropods like Allosaurus, fierce predator, powerful jaws, sharp claws, like a prehistoric lion, but way bigger.
So giants munching on trees, predators stalking their prey. Sounds intense.
It was a world teeming with life. And not just on land. The Jurassic oceans were also bursting with evolution.
Oh, right. We can't forget about those marine reptiles.
Exactly. Ichthyosaurs, they look kind of like dolphins, perfectly adapted for life in the water. And plesiosaurs, with their long necks and powerful flippers, they ruled the seas.
So dinosaurs had conquered the land, the air, and even the oceans. Speaking of air, didn't something amazing happen with dinosaurs in flight during the Jurassic?
You talk about the evolution of birds?
Birds from dinosaurs, wow.
It's incredible. We have fossils that show a clear transition from theropod dinosaurs to birds, Archaeopteryx, for example. It had feathers, wings, but also teeth, claws, and bony tail, like a mix of dinosaur and bird.
So cool. So dinosaurs are ruling, birds are taking flight. What brings this Jurassic party to an end?
Well, all good eras must come to an end. The Jurassic gave way to the Cretaceous period, the final chapter of the Mesozoic era.
Okay, what changed in the Cretaceous?
A lot. The continents kept drifting apart, creating even more diverse environments. But maybe the biggest change was the rise of flowering plants.
Flowering plants like the ones we see today.
Exactly. Angiosperms. They evolved during the Cretaceous and spread like wildfire. They co-evolved with insects, using it for pollination, led to an explosion of new plant and animal species. The world was getting a lot more colorful.
So flowers weren't just pretty, they were driving evolution.
They were. And what about the dinosaurs? Well, they were still thriving in the Cretaceous. We see iconic dinosaurs like Triceratops with its massive frill and horns, and of course, Tyrannosaurus rex, the king of the dinosaurs.
T-Rex. I remember being obsessed with them as a kid.
They were pretty amazing. But it's important to remember, the Cretaceous wasn't just about dinosaurs. Mammals and birds were still evolving too. Mammals were small, but they were diversifying, and birds were taking to the skies in ever greater numbers.
It's like there's this whole other story going on in the background. But the Cretaceous, as amazing as it was, it came to an end. That asteroid impact, the one that wiped out the dinosaurs.
It's hard to imagine an event so cataclysmic. An asteroid about 6 miles wide slammed into Earth, near the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Triggered massive tsunamis, wildfires, a global nuclear winter as dust and debris blocked out the sun.
A nuclear winter? That's terrifying.
It was. Wiped out an estimated 75% of all plant and animal species, including, yes, the non-avian dinosaurs.
But some survived, right? Those mammals were waiting in the wings.
They were. And that extinction event, as tragic as it was, created opportunities for mammals to take over.
The end of one era, the beginning of another, the age of mammals.
Exactly. The Cenozoic Era, the Paleogene Period, that came first. Mammals evolved into all sorts of forms, taking on the roles that dinosaurs had filled before. We see the evolution of early primates, the ancestors of monkeys, apes, and humans.
So from tiny shrew-like creatures to, well, us.
And then the Neogene Period. That saw the rise of grasslands, led to the evolution of all those grazing mammals we see today. Horses, antelopes, bison.
It's amazing how changes in plants can lead to such different animals.
Co-evolution. It's a beautiful thing. And during the Neogene, we see something really important. The emergence of hominins.
Hominins.
That's the group that includes humans and our extinct ancestors. They were walking upright, using tools.
Our own lineage starting to take shape.
Exactly. And then the Neogene transitions into the Quaternary Period, which is what we're in now, marked by dramatic climate swings. The Pleistocene Ice Age, for example.
The Ice Age. When glaciers covered huge parts of the planet.
Yep. Those massive ice sheets advanced and retreated, sculpting the landscapes, influencing evolution. During this time, Homo sapiens emerged in Africa and eventually migrated across the globe.
We were quite the travelers.
We were, adapting to all sorts of challenging environments. And while that was happening, many of the megafauna, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths, they went extinct.
Extinct. Oh, man.
Yeah. Climate change probably played a role. And, well, human impact, too. Which brings us to where we are now, the Anthropocene.
The Anthropocene. The age of humans.
It's a proposed epoch, recognizing the impact we've had on the planet. Not just pollution, climate change, landscapes, biodiversity. We've reshaped the Earth.
It's kind of humbling when you think about it, from those early creatures in the Cambrian to now.
It is. We've come a long way. And as we navigate this Anthropocene, understanding our planet's past is more crucial than ever.
Well said. What a journey. From the Paleozoic to the dinosaurs, the rise of mammals, and the emergence of humans. It's been an amazing deep dive. Thank you so much for guiding us through it all.
My pleasure. And for those listening, if you could travel back in time to any geological period, which one would it be?
Think about it, folks, and keep exploring.
The Jurassic was pretty amazing, but the Cretaceous period that followed the Jurassic lasted from about 145 to 66 million years ago. And it was a time of huge changes.
Huge changes? Like what?
The continents, they kept drifting apart, creating new oceans and land masses.
Right.
But the most significant development, I think, was the rise of flowering plants.
Flowering plant? You mean like flowers?
Exactly. Angiosperms is what they're called. And they evolved during the Cretaceous.
Really?
Yeah, and they spread really quickly across the globe.
I never would have guessed.
They developed these really close relationships with insects, using them as pollinators.
Yeah.
And that led to a boom in new plant and animal species.
So flowers weren't just pretty, they helped create the ecosystems we see today.
Exactly. They were a driving force of evolution.
That's wild. So what about the dinosaurs? What were they up to during all of this?
Oh, the dinosaurs were still around. They were thriving. In fact, they diversified into new forms, taking advantage of all the changes going on. And, there was more food around thanks to the flowering plants.
So, like, what kind of dinosaurs evolved?
Well, we see the evolution of some of the most iconic dinosaurs like Triceratops with its massive frill and horns, and of course, Tyrannosaurus rex.
T-Rex.
Yeah, one of the largest land predators of all time.
I remember being obsessed with T-Rex as a kid.
They were pretty amazing creatures. But it's important to remember that during this time, mammals and birds were still evolving too.
Oh, right.
Mammals were still pretty small, but they were diversifying, evolving into new forms, exploring new ecological niches, that sort of thing.
Makes sense.
And birds were taking to the skies in bigger numbers, experimenting with different flight styles and adapting to different environments.
So it's like this whole other story is happening alongside the dinosaurs.
Exactly. But the Cretaceous, as vibrant as it was, came to a pretty sudden and dramatic end.
You mean the asteroid impact?
That's the one, the event that wiped out the dinosaurs.
It's hard to imagine something that big happening.
It was a massive asteroid, about 6 miles wide,
6 miles wide.
that slammed into Earth near the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico about 66 million years ago.
I've heard about that.
It caused tsunamis, wildfires, and this global nuclear winter.
A nuclear winter.
Yeah, because all the dust and debris blocked out the sun, and that caused temperatures to plummet.
It sounds terrifying.
This is devastating. An estimated 75% of all plant and animal species on Earth were wiped out, including most of the dinosaurs.
But some survived, right? Didn't you say the mammals were waiting in the wings?
I did. And the KPG extinction, as tragic as it was, gave those mammals the opportunity to take over.
Like they finally got their chance.
Exactly. They diversified and radiated into new forms, filling those ecological niches that were left vacant by the dinosaurs.
It's like the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new one.
That's a great way to put it. The end of the Mesozoic era and the dawn of the Cenozoic, the age of mammals.
What happened during the Cenozoic?
Well, it was a time of incredible change and diversification for mammals. The Paleogene period came first, right after the Cretaceous, and mammals evolved into a really wide variety of forms. They took on roles that dinosaurs had filled before.
Fascinating.
We even see the evolution of early primates, the ancestors of monkeys, apes, and, well, us.
Wow.
And then came the Neogene period, which saw the rise of grasslands.
So like those wide open plains you see in nature documentaries.
Exactly. And with those grasslands came the evolution of grazing mammals, like horses and antelopes.
It's incredible to think about how all of these pieces fit together.
Isn't it? From those tiny shrew-like creatures that lived alongside the dinosaurs to the vast herds of grazing mammals roaming the grasslands. It's a huge transformation. And somewhere in all of that, our own lineage emerged.
That's right, we're part of that story.
You got it. During the Neogene, we see the first hominins,
Hominids.
the group that includes humans and our extinct ancestors.
Yeah.
They were walking upright, using tools, setting the stage for us.
It's amazing how far we've come.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then the Neogene transitioned into the Quaternary period, which is what we're in now.
So we're living in the Quaternary.
We are. And it's been a time of some really dramatic climate swings, including the Pleistocene Ice Age.
The Ice Age, wow.
Massive ice sheets covered huge areas of the planet, advancing and retreating over thousands of years, shaping the land and influencing evolution.
I can't even imagine.
During that time, Homo sapiens emerged in Africa,
That's us.
and they migrated across the globe, adapting to all sorts of challenging environments.
Humans are so resilient.
We are. But as humans spread, a lot of the megafauna, like mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant sloths, went extinct.
That's so sad.
It is. Climate change probably played a role, and, well, human impact too, which leads us to the Anthropocene.
The Anthropocene, it's a powerful concept.
It is. It's a proposed epoch that recognizes the huge impact we humans have had on the planet.
We've really changed things.
We have. It's not just about pollution. It's about climate change, landscapes, biodiversity. We've reshaped the Earth.
It makes you think, you know?
It does. From those early creatures in the Cambrian to now, it's been an incredible journey.
It really has. From the Paleozoic to the dinosaurs, the rise of mammals, and the evolution of humans, it's a story of resilience, adaptation, and interconnectedness.
Beautifully put.
Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it too.
And remember, keep exploring.